How sloppy, incompetent, and corrupt is Donald Trump's DOJ? Just take a look at what happened in the Central District of California, where a federal judge dismissed a criminal indictment against somebody who ICE shot and claimed that the person they shot was the aggressor, and the judge cited just how sloppy and incompetent the DOJ in the Central District of California was, turning over discovery and documents late, missing documents and videos and other things in the discovery. The judge described the conduct by the DOJ as essentially a train wreck that deprived the criminal defendant, who's now innocent. The case was dismissed with prejudice, depriving him of his constitutional rights. Now, and it's not just any criminal defendant, it's a major social media influencer by the name of Carlitos Richard Parias. The Trump regime ICE accused him of driving his car back and forth, hitting law enforcement cars that had boxed them in, causing the ICE agents to fire at him, and then some of the bullets ricocheted and hit the guy. I think this follows in a line of other cases too, where I don't think there's any other cases where ICE shot somebody, blamed the person they shot of engaging in the criminal conduct. I think in all of those cases, they've all been dismissed at this point because ICE and Trump were lying. And when it came to the criminal process where you got to produce discovery and turn things over, they were not complying with the appropriate process. Also, this U.S. District Judge Fernando Ogun says that defendant was deprived of access to counsel while being detained, and the government's failure to comply with court deadlines. You know, an interesting insight that I have, being from Los Angeles and previously being a litigator who practiced in federal court, I know Judge Ogun. I know that he is a no-nonsense judge, a stickler for deadlines. And if you missed an expert disclosure or you missed anything, even by a few hours, and you asked for help, I mean, he was the kind of guy who would say, no, so sorry, you're out of luck. And what's so fascinating to me is the idea that the DOJ has been turned into basically like Trump's sloppy law firms that miss deadlines. Remember how we've always covered Trump when he was a civil defendant or a plaintiff in the civil cases where he sues people for billions of dollars, or even the criminal cases. And remember how we would report all the time, like Trump blew another deadline and they missed this. And the courts would be like, you don't know how to do cross-examination, Alina Habba. Like, do you need help with the rules of evidence? Now the DOJ is doing that, and it shouldn't be a surprise because Trump's picking people like Alina Habba, who's since been disqualified, to lead major divisions in the DOJ. And the Central District of California also had a guy who was like a pretender United States attorney for a little bit of time. He wasn't approved and confirmed by the Senate. At least he doesn't call himself the United States attorney anymore. He calls himself like an acting deputy or some title like that. But when you've got people like Halligan and Habba and these people who don't know what they're doing, this is the result, especially when you also have the brain drain of thousands of DOJ lawyers and FBI agents who knew what they were doing, leaving the DOJ. And do y'all remember when we reported last week when I was doing a hot take with Harry Litman about, one of these cases where the DOJ said they couldn't meet deadlines before the New Year's because they didn't have the technical expertise in order to delete files or produce files in a relatively simple discovery request? That's what you're dealing with here. Let me just show you how the local news reported this, and the fact that this is the DOJ that looks like a sloppy law firm, a sloppy solo lawyer. Let's take a look at this. Let's play this clip.
A federal judge has dismissed an indictment against a TikTok streamer shot by a federal agent in October in South LA. That judge says Carlitos Ricardo Parias, who goes by Richard LA, was denied access to his lawyers while being held in detention. The judge also cites the government's failure to meet discovery deadlines, including timely release of body camera footage of the shooting. Agents accused Parias of ramming his car into their vehicles after they boxed him in, but video raises some serious questions about those claims. His trial was set to begin on Tuesday. The judge dismissed the indictment with prejudice, meaning prosecutors cannot refile the same charges again. But Parias could remain in detention as his immigration case moves forward.
Let's bring in Harry Litman from the Talking Feds YouTube channel, the Talking Feds podcast, and the Talking Feds Substack. Harry, the reason you're called Talking Feds is when you started, it was feds who were talking to each other. Top right. People, top federal prosecutors. You were the top federal prosecutor in a district in Pennsylvania. You were a top federal prosecutor at Maine Justice. So when you see this, the DOJ handling cases like this, you bring a unique perspective. Share it with us, Harry.
Well, thanks. And everything you say, Ben, about the sloppiness and the just inexplicable failure to meet deadlines and the like is true. But I think it's clear from the opinion that there's a lot more than sloppiness going on. This has a little bit of the flavor of the Abrego Garcia case and the way that the department is trying to play both ends against the middle, the ends being the criminal process and the immigration process. So here's what happened. First, when the judge here lays out the facts, he just takes the facts as presented by the defendant. And you heard in the clip you just played that there's real doubts about the DOJ story. Well, here's the story as presented by the judge. They box him in. He's trying to get out. They break the passenger window. They put a gun in there. That's deadly force. You may not do that unless you're threatened with deadly force, and they shoot him in the arm. And then, of course, as seems to happen every time there's this kind of encounter, he's the guy who winds up getting charged with, and the charges that were dismissed were assault on a federal officer. So there's a lot of, I think, cynicism and disbelief even in the basic charges that come through in the judge's opinion. But there's another factor. They thought they could detain this guy and they lost. The magistrate said, gave him bail, and they were, I think, fit to be tied. And they took him immediately, right away, even though they hadn't begun. They say it's a little bit strange because he is, as you say, such a prominent TikToker. He's got 350,000 followers, and he chronicles the abuses that are happening on the streets of LA, which I think has put him in the crosshairs for them. But anyway, they say he's illegal. He's come from Mexico and he's an illegal alien. So they right away take him 2 hours away and put him in a immigration detention center. And that's when the whole incredible deprivation of right to counsel begins, because their counsel is down in Los Angeles. They're calling up to try to arrange a phone call. Oh, no, it's this person who handles. Oh, I'm sorry, we're not doing that on Tuesdays. Oh, that was actually that person and now they're gone. Let's do a video. Oh, it doesn't work. Oh, I'm sorry, you have the wrong email. And then when they even show up, they say, you can't come in here because you don't represent them on immigration. And then they say you can only spend an hour. In other words, leveraging the whole immigration system to keep him from getting his right to counsel. And check out what they actually did. This was, I think, really pivotal to the judge. They said to the judge, well, we've got a way for him to get right to counsel. No problem. Reverse your detention decision, put him in jail in Los Angeles. Then his attorneys will have no trouble actually being able to meet with him. And the judge makes it clear. He's pretty gentle and toward the end of the opinion, he makes it clear that they did this. They put him on this detention hold as a kind of reprisal for his having, because he won the detention motion and they were unable to keep him incarcerated. And that was their solution. When again, you're supposed to really, if criminal charges take priority, they should have gone with that first. They don't, and they're warehousing him and using the immigration system as the judge sees it. This isn't my supposition, to actually, punish him and keep him from being able to get his trial together. So all the facts of it, the actual charges, and then all of this stuff in terms of deprivation of counsel paint a vivid picture of both sloppiness, and that's an understatement, and malice. Now, it's a very, very severe, the ultimate sanction to dismiss with prejudice. And the judge makes clear he knows it's an ultimate sanction, but it's really deserving here. We'll see what their next move is. Do they try to appeal saying, well, that you didn't have to dismiss with prejudice. You could have given us more time, or we'd have gotten our act together so he would access to counsel? Do they instead just go, if they instead go on the immigration side of things, I think we've got Abrego Garcia too, right? We have a thing where the criminal charges have been swept away by the power of the federal courts. But then there is the ability that's going to be hard to parry of the immigration forces in the DOJ to try to deport him. But now it's been raised to a certain level and of kind of political focus, just like with Abrego. And I think the courts will be vigilant about about trying to keep the DOJ from just, here you go, the wise guy, now we'll deport you. And yet their tools, as we've learned in case after case, are fewer when it comes to that. But this is, if you read the opinion carefully, a situation where the judge thinks they just, went after him in order to basically punish him for winning his detention motion, and they're not being able to keep him in jail.
Look, the bottom line is there's no one pointing a gun to the head of the DOJ saying you need to file these cases and bring these indictments. They've made the decision. There used to be rigorous standards before the DOJ would bring these types of cases. So you bring the case, and then they're all of a sudden shocked, I tell you, that a criminal defendant hires competent lawyers to then make the requests and to go through the right types of motions. And then in response, the Trump DOJ does the equivalent of, if a defense lawyer did this, or if a private practicing lawyer would do this, it would be malpractice. It would be legal malpractice, missing deadlines, not turning things over.
Sanctionable, really,
Functional. And here, we, the people, entrust with our tax dollars the DOJ with this sacred duty to effectuate the law and order. And when they go about doing it, and then they can't even back up what they're doing and handle it in such a sloppy way where a federal judge is saying, DOJ, you're terrible. Like, the judge was saying, you are awful. You're sloppy. Like,
worse.
This is like malpractice before this court taking place. I have no choice but to dismiss it with prejudice. And, when you would show up as a DOJ, we'll see if you admit to this or not. When you would show up as a DOJ,
you take that back. Oh, you haven't said it yet.
No,
okay,
when you would show up, it's a good thing. When you would show up as a DOJ lawyer, the judge would look at you a certain way, and you would almost have a little bit of an advantage. They know what they're doing. This lawyer appears in front of me a lot. They're good,
truthful.
They're not going to. And then when a private lawyer may not show up in front of that judge, you may get a little bit of a different look from that judge. And that's just part of the dynamic. But that dynamic has shifted on its head, where now the DOJ shows up before judges and they're viewed as, what BS are you trying to sell me? They're sloppy. The reputation's been tarnished. Final word before we go.
Yeah. So first, you're so right, and it's heartbreaking. Second, it's true in a normal time you might not bring this case, but I'm actually here to tell you as a U.S. attorney, anytime an agent in the field thinks that somebody assaulted them, you get huge pressure as a U.S. attorney to back up the agent and go for the case. But it's all contingent, of course, on it having been on the up and up. If the version they were telling were true, and you knew as a U.S. attorney they'd actually assaulted an agent, that would be something that would really call for a vigorous response. So now it's really turned on its head, because what seems to be happening is these rogue agents break the law, use excessive force, and then come in and say it was all this guy's fault. That's the sort of thing that didn't happen. That's out of the civil rights era in the South and the like, actually having agents exaggerate or not tell the truth. And you're putting it exactly right, Ben, because maybe the judge didn't believe it. The facts don't seem to sort of fit it the way they boxed him in, but maybe they're actually telling the truth that somehow this guy was the aggressor. And that's where things stand because of all the derelictions of ICE and others, is not only don't they get the benefit of the doubt, maybe the actual opposite. This judge clearly didn't believe the whole narrative that the U.S. put into the criminal charges, that this guy was the bad guy and the aggressor. And man, oh man, that's a different and bad day for the Department of Justice. And it's the, wages of having been not just sloppy, but squirrely and dishonest, you got to say, for many months since January 2025.
Well, everybody hit subscribe to Harry Litman's YouTube channel. Search Talking Feds. And he also has the Talking Feds podcast and Substack. But make sure you subscribe to that YouTube channel. Thanks, Harry.
Hey, thanks, Ben.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.